like to call this meeting to order for the Board of Education, the School District of Baraboo, for Monday, March the 10th, 2014, with roll call. Mr. Cummings is not here. Mr. McNevin?
Here.
Mr. Meering?
Here.
Mr. Mortimer?
Here.
Ms. Riley?
Here.
Mr. Vedro?
Here.
And Vodak here. Continue with the pledge. The flag is behind the counter. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I would entertain a motion for the approval of the minutes of the last regular board meeting, February the 24th.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion by Meering, seconded by Vedro. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Minutes thus approved. Brings us to correspondence, of which I have none. Any other board members with correspondence?
Yeah, I've got a couple of correspondence. One is from our senator for our area, John Erpenbach, and then another one was from the education chairman of the Senate, Luther Olson, both in support of the Common Core state standard. So that's the correspondence that I have.
Any other board members with correspondence? Hearing none. Administrative correspondence? Hearing none. Brings us to the portion of the agenda entitled Public Viewpoints. Do we have anyone here for public viewpoints tonight? Yes, there's a microphone in the center. If you would state your name if you're here for yourself or on behalf of the group.
My name is Melissa Blue, and I am here on behalf of my child, and among other children. Today when picking up my child from Jack Middle School, I was met by Baraboo PD telling me I could not pick up my child on Teardrop, and I had to pick up my child on the street. My child had no knowledge of this, of where I was going to be, and why was there no phone call made out to the parents? There was mass confusion. Children had no idea where to go. If they can send out a mass call about school cancellations, reading your newsletter, anything, I get numerous mass phone calls about that, then they should have made a mass phone call about this because parents were lost and parents were extremely upset. All parents parking on the street, trying to park in the Teardrop were sent back out. It caused mass confusion and congestion. When school let out, the children were lost. There was no crossing guard for 10 to 15 minutes. That means kids came out in large numbers. There was no crossing guard. I witnessed 6 children in the 15 minutes that I was parked there almost get hit, one by a bus. Because of the hill coming over the hill, there's no visual whatsoever at that crossing point. And the buses are coming off of that street. I was so upset, I was crying and shaking. I called a friend of mine, and I called the school. I called Jack Young Middle and asked when your next board meeting was. It was today, obviously. That's why we're here. Being that there was no crossing guard out there for 10 to 15 minutes, we've noticed this in the morning that they go in early, and at the afternoon, they're never out there on time. There's children crossing sporadically. Yes, they are from the ages of 6th grade to 8th grade. They're still children. If one child was injured today, the school district would have been held responsible because obviously it wasn't the parents' fault because they were met by Baraboo PD. They had to be parked where they were told to park. It absolutely needs to be addressed today, and if it's not addressed, I will assume that you don't have our children's best interest at heart. And I will be pulling my child out along with the other 2 children and along with my friend will also be pulling her children out, and I can guarantee you that it will continue to happen because I personally believe that if you don't have our children's best interest at heart, then you're not a true school district. Our children are the reason for a school district. We are supposed to send our children to school to be safe, happy, and healthy. And if we don't feel that you have their best interest in mind, then we have every right to pull our children out of the school district.
Okay, well, I certainly can understand your concerns. I'm absolutely unaware of the situation at the middle school.
We did not have any communication from the police department. We did not know that they were going to be there.
The Baraboo PD, when I talked to him today, he told me that the school requested it.
You know, we had a school request for the back parking lot because parents were parking in the emergency zone there.
Which I totally understand.
Yeah, and that's the only communication we've had with them in regard. So I apologize that happened today, and we certainly will address it, but I was unaware that they were going to be there today to do that.
there needs to be some kind of plan. The kids can't see, if parents are supposed to park out in the street, children can't see around the vehicles to get through, and plus, they're getting out of school, they're happy to go home. I'm sorry, no kid wants to be in school, well, for the majority, no kid likes to be in school all day. When they get out, they wanna go home. They take off running in groups, mass groups. And it was, I have never been so terrified for children in my life.
Well, fortunately, apparently nobody was compromised through the situation, and as Mr. Gannell said, I mean, if the district was unaware they were down there, I mean, I don't really have any other explanation or excuse, but
Well, so are we gonna be able to pull into the teardrop tomorrow to
We'll
pick up our
address that with
children?
the PD in the morning, yes.
Something needs to be done because it was a very dangerous situation outside of school.
And is it our policy to have crossing guards?
We do have a crossing guard that is out there. She leaves the building when the kids do at 3:15.
No,
Or close to it.
she was not out there, and she's never out there on time, ever. I'm sorry, but I watched my stepson walk across the street without any adult around. Like I said, granted, he's in 7th grade, he's still a child.
okay. Well, again, I appreciate your concern. If you have additional follow-up you want with the board, feel free to contact me.
I do.
I also just want to thank you for bringing that to our attention. You know, we have a district planning group, and part of that function is to look at the safety. Part of our long-range plan is to ensure the fact that we have the most secure ways for parents to pick up their kids. We've got Jack Young Middle School and the high school on the major intersections, and part of our concern is to ensure the fact that as a part of our ongoing efforts with this referendum, the first part having to be safety and maintenance, but we're also, part of that is identifying areas specifically addressing the issue of drop-off and pickup
Right.
for safety purposes. So thank
Today
you.
was
Thank
very-
you. We are focusing a lot of attention on it, but, you know, it won't happen tomorrow.
That's
But
fine.
we will
That's
work
fine.
toward ensuring the fact that every one of our children is safe and sound.
That's my concern, is what's gonna happen tomorrow.
It would be mine as well.
Next year is next year, tomorrow is tomorrow.
Well, again, I'm sure John will do whatever he can, and again, John, certainly I would like you to maybe follow up with Crystal and to get a report to us
Absolutely.
with what actually happened today, and then what's following up with the police department going into the future. So we certainly will address that, and John, I'm sure will address that for your concerns. And
Okay,
if you
so
want
how
to,
will we
please
know?
feel free to give John a call too, because.
I will give you a call tomorrow.
Yeah,
You know who I am.
Yeah.
okay, no problem.
Thank you.
Thank
All right,
you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public viewpoints? Any other public viewpoints? Any other public viewpoints? Hearing none, I'd like to move on to the portion of the agenda entitled Staff and Student Recognition, and I'm going to turn to Dr. Ritzenthaler for an intro.
Well, I'd like to provide just a little bit of background information before Landon presents tonight. He contacted me in January, and he was working on his professional development plan. But prior to that, he's been utilizing a Google site that he started this school year as a resource for students and parents to access information from his classes. It's a place where kids in any of the classes can visit for class information, handouts, class materials, and he's been teaching right from the website during his health classes, which actually works really well because students know that they can access class information even if they are absent or miss a class. He's also developed a Thunderbird Golf website for athletes to keep up to date with scheduling and resources, and a weight room program page for an intramural program that he started 2 years ago. So this all got him thinking about why not utilize the Google site for his professional development plan. And Landon is the first one teacher in our district who has all of his information and resources online. So I thought it was very interesting, and it's timely because we're going to be talking more about professional development plans for next year. So I asked Landon to come tonight and just highlight a few things about the process that he went through and also the components of the plan.
Thank you, Dr. Ritzenthaler, for the nice intro there. You covered a couple things that I was going to talk about already, but this is my 5th year at Jack Young Middle School. teaching 6th, 7th, and 8th grade Phi Ed and adaptive Phi Ed, as well as being in different classrooms teaching 7th and 8th grade health, so kind of all over the building. And it was nice to have all this information just kind of on one site. That way I can take my computer, plug it in, and get classes started right away. So like she said, I thought that developing my professional development plan and my work, I focused on management and instructional strategies. So the website was kind of a part of that as well, to have things laid out. I can have my teaching objectives and those kinds of things up on the board, referring back to things and easy to navigate. So as I was developing and going through my artifacts and evidence for my growth, I thought I could probably use that site now that I was able to get used to how to use it and what I was able to do. Let me just bring this up here and hopefully Mike can help me out, get it mirrored. Show you a couple things.
Now that we all know your passcode.
Rand, you better
Oh,
change.
Rand. Nice cover there.
All right. So what I was able to do, and this is just a part of my website that I developed, and then I use that for resources for Phi Ed classes, health classes. But I basically just made a specific page for my professional development plan, and that wouldn't really be accessible unless they had the link for it, which I was able to then just send over once I was done with all of my things. So for my initial licensure renewal, I used the QEI website, the Quality Educator initiative, that's what I was. But I basically just used the same format as if you were to complete your PDP and then print it out, the printed version. So I thought with utilizing Google Docs and the fact that it's all web-based, you can just take the link and create different links. And I know that the paper version with all the evidence would accumulate quite a bit, and you can pretty much have a big binder full of things. So what I did was I just kind of used the same format, the reflection portion, what my goal was with management instructional strategies, the rationale for why I decided to use that as my first 5-year goal, and kind of keep going down. What I was able to do then, for example, I was able to create a link, and this is just a copy of my goal approval form, and then it would just open up into its own page, and then it would have the evidence right there to take a look at, and then when you're done, you just close that tab and you can go back to where you were, and then having the timeline for the different activities that I planned on doing for growth. And able to have a portion for my yearly reflections. This was the nice part about having it on a website, having the ability to link different things. I was able to have kind of a format that would flow, and I'd have my specific evidence. For example, this first one was the fact that aligning it with PBIS and behavioral matrices, what it would look like to be respectful, responsible, and safe in Phi Ed versus health class. So for example, having it linked right to what that would look like for a Phi Ed class, and then also including something for my health class and how that would vary in different areas of the building. And able to just close out of those, and then how the evidence would verify my growth. So I have that section available, and then moving on to the next artifact. So once I was able to kind of see how I wanted to lay it out, it was pretty easy to have all those things available on there. And then being a part of the PBIS committee for Jack and Middle School, another thing that tied into management quite a bit, having this is an example of the handbook that we put together. So very easy to have things all available in one place, and then when I'm all done, just simply take the link and send it over. So it worked out pretty well, I thought.
It went very smoothly. Like I said, it was the first one in our district to be completed entirely online, and hopefully you'll be able to coach a few more people
Sure.
through that
Look forward to
process. What kind of feedback have you received from parents and students about your website and having everything accessible?
It actually works out pretty well because I lay it out for the students right away, whether it's a yearly class like something like FIED or a semester class like health. I spend a couple days explaining to the kids, and I would have kids come up to the smartboard and actually navigate from just a blank screen to get to the website and then to my page, and having different ways for them to access it. And then I would send that information home where they would have to go through kind of the expectations for the class for the semester, and then have them help navigate, and they sign it, so that way I know that the kids are letting their parents know that all this stuff's available. And then I talk about how they can use that to review if we're going to do a unit assessment and things like that. So I've had a few parents contact me saying that it's nice that that they're able to go back and see a video that we watched for the day, or having something that I scanned from a health book, and having that information so that the book's not necessarily just in the classroom and they can't get to it. So it's been pretty nice hearing from parents.
Teresa, did you want to add anything? I see you're here to support
I
Landon
am here.
tonight.
Yep. He's going to have to be the one to support everybody to do that.
I'll show you.
That would make for a good technology academy session.
Oh, it would.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Do you have time for a couple questions from the board?
Sure.
Are there any questions from the board?
I can answer one.
Not, I'm gonna write it down.
On his website, maybe I can answer any question I want, I think, from there. And I think this is a great resource, not only, especially for your students, but also for parents. So I can go in there and say, I think I can even get a real feel for what your class is about. School is many times so mysterious for people, and I think this really helps to break down those barriers. So I want to thank you for that effort.
That's great.
John, is there anything you want to add about how his plan specifically supports PBIS at the middle school?
Well, he's done a lot of work both with the PBIS committee and through his plan in sort of aligning the goals from his plan to what the PBIS committee is working on in the building. So his PDP has fit right into, and it should, really what we're trying to accomplish in terms of our building goals and our behavior goals that are tied to our overall building. So.
Crystal, could I just add, I work with Landon in terms of our adaptive FIED and working with our students, some of our students who have very severe cognitive and physical disabilities, and the level of technology that he has incorporated into that program in terms of bringing in the Wii Fitness, so students are very motivated to use that as part of that class. Landon has also set up private YouTube videos that he then shares with parents, so the parents can actually see what their student is working on. So it's just amazing, absolutely amazing.
I would argue that he's created a model program for
Yeah.
other middle schools to look at in terms of adaptive FIED.
Definitely.
I don't think you have to argue that.
I think we need to copyright it.
No sense getting confrontation.
Here it is.
I think we're with you on that one.
Well, Landon, we appreciate you taking time on probably the first spring-like day that we
Yeah,
had, this year. And
Since we have time, yes.
we look forward to having you share more of this with other teachers.
Thank you.
So thank you very much.
Brings us to the portion of the agenda under reports. The first and only is the referendum communication update. First of all, we had a informational session at North Freedom last Monday. Principal Andreessen was there, Board Member Mortimer, myself, Dr. Ritzenthaler, Finance Director Ms. Baldwin. First one that we did happened to be in conjunction with parent support group meeting. So we had fairly good representation of parents. The communication, or the turnout from the community was light, but I thought for our first opportunity to do so, it turned out fairly well. I don't know if Dr. Ritzenthaler, if you'd like to add anything about North Freedom before we touch on East.
I think it was nice to see some non-parents there who took that opportunity to tour the building and to ask questions. And at East, we had a few more parents there at the informational night. We had a few more board members there, and just want to highlight that tomorrow night. Tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night.
Yeah, will be our last one at the Baraboo High School. And I know principals have been busy with the tours. I don't think we've had a lot of people show up, but still we're offering that for people who are interested in taking advantage of that opportunity.
Mr. Mortimer, you were at North Freedom. Any feedback, comments that you got from people that were there you would care to share?
No, I didn't really hear from anybody, no.
And then at East, Mr. McNevin, any comments or feedback you care to share from that session?
No, we could have used a few more folks.
How about Mr. Meering? Any feedback?
Oh, again, I talked to both parents and staff, and they had questions. They just wanted to understand the process, and so certainly, yeah, we're there to answer questions and to give them the information on what this is about. So.
Ms. Riley?
Well, you know, I thought it was interesting that even though the referendum itself is not about programmatic changes, that was the topic that some parents have been interested in, and really kind of there is a lack of understanding or awareness as to what kind of changes we have put in place in the past few years. And parents were really, you know, initially it's, well, I'm not sure I want to support this because I'm not sure that the curriculum is where I'd like to see it be. And when I explained about some of the things that we've put in place, boy, it sure gave people a sense of confidence and I think increased support. So I think although that's not the message, or that's not what this referendum is particularly funding, I think it's important that when we're talking about it, we're talking about what the referendum is for and why we think it's important, but also what we're doing as a district. Those school improvements, school continuous improvement, people want to hear it, and they're excited when they do.
Well, I appreciate board members that were there. I mean, a couple of comments that were made to me, and this would be particularly at East. It was fairly easy to show those that were inquiring in regards to the redevelopment and reconfiguration of East School as far as from a potential safety concern. I think the safety aspect is something that's fairly easily grasped once people see in black and white what it is. I do know that there is a segment that would like to know, in reference to the dollar amounts for the referendum, pertain to a certain building. In other words, what from the referendum would go to North Freedom, what from the referendum would be allocated to projects and reconfiguration at East, and we do have those numbers, so if anybody doesn't have them and is interested in them, if somebody has asked that question of you, you would have the information to share.
They are on the website now too.
And they're on the website. Mr. McNevin, you also last week had an opportunity to speak to the Kiwanis. Any feedback you care to share from that session?
Yeah, that was great. Probably 30, 35, somewhere in there. Well attended. Lots of good questions. It's a very engaged group. Obviously, they have a high level of support for the school district. They have a high level of support for the Boys and Girls Club. I know they just got done sponsoring our Spread the Word to End the Word campaign. You know, they asked a lot about the process, about how we establish priorities and allocate those dollars and what's next. Great informational session. Could have gone on for a lot longer.
And then I had an opportunity on Thursday to talk to the Golden K, or Golden Kiwanis, and there was about 20 in attendance, which for a winter meeting with the way the weather has been, they said that was a very good representation. They had a lot of questions, the majority of which pertained to the aspects of the referendum. I had one gentleman stop me afterwards, and it was about an hour's worth of question and answers from them. The one gentleman came up to me and said that I needed to sit out in front of Abe Elementary School and watch the traffic patterns in the mornings and in the afternoons because he lives a half a block away. And I had not had the particular drawing out that talks about the changes to the drop-off points at Abe. And once he saw that, he said that makes perfect sense, hopes that everything works well, and asked if he could have a copy of the document, which I then gave him so that he could share with his neighbors so that everybody understands what that means to Abe. There were a lot of other questions that I was asked as well, from open enrollment issues to online students to homeschooling. I mean, it was a very lively group, and also, as Sean said, this particular group, I think, is very engaged in the community, past leaders in the community. They might not take kindly to being phrased past, but they are very supportive. The vast majority of the school's efforts did get the question as to, you know, if we have all these maintenance issues, why isn't that something we were putting money away for in the past? And my simple answer was, we should have been, but we couldn't. And I think that there's a lot of people that probably ask that same question, and the bottom line is that, like so many other districts in the state, money went for other things, such as emergency repairs to the wall at the middle school and such. But anyways, I also thought it was a very good time well spent.
What I have heard from one of our parents in terms of the public safety issue with school drop-off and pickup and the Abe issue suggests to me that one of the focuses between now and April 1st for the referendum might be a specific focus on what the traffic patterns will be at the schools that have been identified. We talked about GLW as a particular issue, because I know as a parent there how crazy it can be, especially when the high school lets out and Wednesday. So we're on top of those and we have plans, but obviously there's so much information available that it would be best, I think, if we help people by focusing on specific topics and maybe had some communication. Here's what we're going to do for drop-off and pickup at these schools. Here's what we're going to do for specific other issues. But I think the key issue that both parents as well as non-parents are interested in is what happens when 3,000 students get dropped off in our district and picked up in our district every day.
Well, thank you for that.
I want to thank Annie too for attending East's information session and talking with some of the people that were in attendance, and for the accurate and thorough coverage that you've provided on this topic for our school district and community. So thank you.
And I guess I would just add, the second postcard that was planned to go out will go out early next week. And that'll be the last postcard that goes out before April 1st.
Okay.
The reason we're doing it next week versus right before April 1st is spring break. So we thought it'd be better to send out next week.
I'd like to afford another opportunity for any other board members we haven't heard from yet, because this is the second to the last meeting that we're going to have before the April 1st referendum. Does any other board members have any feedback they care to share from the community or comments to share?
Well, I guess I was a little disappointed in the fact, I assumed, which I shouldn't assume, but I assume there's going to be a certain time between 6 and 7:30, for example, like 6:30, where like either Kevin or whoever would be in front of the group and they'd sit around and ask him questions and then tour the school. Because to me, it was everybody's just all over the place, you know what I mean? I thought if they had one of the people presenting in front of, well, like here.
Well, I think part of the issue is if you have a presentation at a specific time, you're eliminating people that can't come until 15 minutes after that would start. I think when we have our session here, it'll be a little bit easier to lay out within this room different stations. And I think that probably expecting somebody to listen to me talk for 15 or 20 minutes, as expressed by the board in previous fashions, probably would not have been the best way to communicate. And we took the advice of those that have done projects like this in the past as far as communication, so I guess I have to believe that the way that they have come to the point of presenting informational sessions, which is what we did in particular at East, and you didn't, it was a little bit different setup at East, but you didn't have an opportunity to see that. Obviously, the one for tomorrow night, we've pretty much got established as to how we're going to do it. And I think that it does afford you a little bit more flexibility in allowing people to attend at 7 versus 6 or 6:30. And hopefully tomorrow night, the session here will have a number of more people in attendance. This building seems to have a revolving door out in front, parents coming and going for, I assume, a dinner tonight for one of the sports groups or whomever. But anyways, I appreciate your comments. Anything else? I'd like to then move along to the continuous school improvement portion of the agenda. We have Principal Carls with us tonight. He's going to share some information on how the principals, in particular, how he uses walkthrough data.
I'll be short, probably 5 minutes.
He looked at you, Sean, when he
It's
said
all right,
that.
we're here. We're not going anywhere, Nick.
Does this work?
Yes, it does, yeah.
I don't know who gave him the luxury of 5 minutes, though.
Allow me to brag for a moment. What I'm going to use here are a few slides from the presentation that I did just with my team. We were at the RTI Summit in Green Bay, and you have here, there's myself, Aaron Verhagen, Janae Schell, and Brian Ashbeck. A few of them are teacher leaders, coaches within our district, as far as instructional coaches. This was the room that we were in, and as you can see, every seat is filled. They brought in extra chairs. We had people lined up on the side.
So they want to hear about Baraboo.
They want to hear about Baraboo because of the great things that we're doing. And they read our description and they were excited and they came in, and I don't think we disappointed. I think they were really happy with what they came away with. And I just wanted to share a little bit of that information because it was Baraboo proud. It's something that administrators say quite a bit. It was a Baraboo proud moment. I'm going to talk a little bit about the district walkthrough process. You're going to notice everything in this slideshow is green and gold. I'm sorry, instead of blue and gold. That's because we were in Green Bay, so we decided to make it a Packers game. The double-sided arrow, that specifically signals that it's a two-way conversation. It's for growth for the administrator as well as growth for the teacher. And we even, through these walkthroughs, bring in instructional coaches, or our instructional facilitators like Teresa Lean here, and it's about growth for them as well. So it really goes in both directions. And when I say that, we use common language. We show the levels of performance that go with the Charlotte Danielson framework. It aligns with evidence. And where I say it can, it's growth for the administrator too is because as we're doing these walkthroughs, we're calibrating. And we're growing by looking at the evidence and we're determining together, okay, how does that fit? And so it's about administrator growth as well. When I was there, I was bragging about Baraboo a little bit. I said that we are a draft or selectively hire and develop organization, and we're always thinking about creating growth mindset. And I truly believe that. Draft and develop, just like the Packers. So as you remember, in every single classroom in the Baraboo School District, we have these posters where we talk about our 4 instructional priorities. They are academic engaged time, questioning and discussion techniques, essential learning targets for the lesson, and checking for understanding. And then with each poster, there's a rubric where it can show, okay, how does a teacher get to distinguished in that certain area? And we've front-loaded this information. We've had a lot of discussion about this information. But we continually want to grow in these areas. That's our focus right now. So as an administrator or an instructional facilitator, we pull up on our iPads. We hit a little link that Matt has put in a lot of work right now to create this. It's unique to Baraboo. And I walk into a classroom, and this is the sheet that I have. And these little items, these check boxes, they focus on those 4 instructional priorities. As I walk through a classroom for 5-10 minutes, I'm searching for key things, and I'm checking off as I see those. Then I hit submit. That gets emailed to the teacher. The teacher can take a look at that. They can choose to come to my office and have a conversation with me about the things that I saw. They can actually now even type right into the document, email it back to me, which I could type back to them, email it back to them. We can start to facilitate a conversation that way. I've had a lot of rich discussion with teachers from this already. And I know what you're saying. That sounds daunting. An administrator walks into my classroom, they have their little iPad, and they're watching me. That's why the next part is so important. And I'm going to give you a little bit of feedback from one of our teachers after I get to that. I'm going to skip this part. This is what we're doing in my building right now. We're taking a look at not just the individual data that we're getting, but we're looking at the building-wide data. So right now, in my building, and this slide was done from a while ago, I've done, between myself and some of the other administrators, over 100 walkthroughs in my building. It's been, 52% of them are done by me. Instructional facilitators have done about 19%. We have the C&I director who's been in there, and the director of people services as well. And these are the things that we're doing, or that we're seeing, building-wide. Essential learning targets for the lesson. 59% of, or 65% of the times that I walked into the classroom, the learning target was posted. It was evident to the students. They could say it back to me. They understood what was going on in the lesson, and they understood why they were learning it. Now, why is that important? When students know what they are learning, their performance on average has been shown to be 27 percentile points higher than students who don't. Was there loss of academic engaged time? 74% of the time, no, there was no loss of academic engaged time. Almost all students were engaged in the lesson. What we found though was 26% of the time through these walkthroughs, there was something little going on that was taking away from the engagement of the students. And so we left little notes about what that could have been. And I'm gonna when I get to the end of these slideshows, I'll tell you what we did next. Now, without even looking at the numbers here, what do you notice from my building? Student self-assessment. That's something we needed to focus on. That's clear. High-level student thinking, rigorous learning tasks. That's something we needed to focus on. So this is what we did next. I took these charts, we put them on poster paper. I took my teachers' leaders, some of the people that just presented with me up at Green Bay, some of our instructional coaches. We got everybody in groups, and we started to facilitate the conversation, and we started to talk about, okay, what are some strategies where we can focus on implementing in the classroom to get students to initiate questions, because we know that's something that we want them to do. As we focused on those areas, then the teacher leaders came back up and presented to the team, or to the rest of my staff, the strategies that they came up with. These are hanging in my office right now. Already, when I've gone into classrooms since doing this activity, I've noticed some of these being implemented. Already, when I've gone and done a formal observation, teachers are doing these things. And this is what's important. Unprompted, when we were up in Green Bay, one of my teachers stood in front of 120 individuals, and she said, you know what, it was really scary when administrators first started walking in my classroom, and they were doing these walkthroughs. But when I see the data like this, and I realize how we're using it for building-wide growth, now it's not as scary. So that's what we're doing in my building with the walkthroughs right now. Any questions?
But you're using the same framework that the other, there might be some things different in other buildings, but you're still using the same framework.
We're all using the same framework, yeah, but we've started facilitating those conversations on the building-wide data.
And Lori or Nick, can you remind the board why we're focused on those 4 instructional
Yeah,
priorities?
for the past 2 years, we've been focused on those same 4 strategies based on research that's been done over 30 years of, decades, or 3 decades, 30 years of research that has the biggest impact on student achievement. So those 4 strategies are the strategies worth paying attention to and devoting time to have the biggest translation or application into student gains for our students.
I am particularly struck by the issue of fear of assessment. And forgive me, but as a leadership consultant of 25 or 30 years, the biggest aha that I have had in the work that I have done in that arena is that before we move a strategy forward, and my metaphor is putting our foot down on the gas, is we have to look to see what the restraining forces are on the brake. And that the first part of what we ought to do is to work toward remove those restraining forces. The frustration is the restraining forces are always irrational, emotional, invisible. They're not having to do with the tactical, reasonable, logical things. And so I would only suggest that before, or as a part of this process that we are engaged in, that we bring those teachers together, as we have with the staff, and we spend so much time with them explaining that this is not an evaluative process. I know we say the words mean nothing on the emotional level. We have to create a culture where our teachers know that they are supported through this process. And for me as an educator, I believe that this is the right direction, and that when people, our competent and trained teachers, are able to grapple with the data, they are the ones who will come up with the solutions. And I think you've demonstrated that.
And I think, Nick kind of glossed over this, but I actually was at the staff meeting where he started this discussion with the teachers, and he didn't come out and say, here are the areas you guys need to work on. The groups did that, and the coaches within that building facilitated those conversations. It wasn't Nick up there
Right.
directing everybody what they needed to do.
Knowing Nick, I'm sure of that.
So, that was really neat to see, because it really empowered those teachers, and they owned that data. And again, they were looking at it from a bigger picture view of our building. What can we do together to make our building better for kids? And it wasn't about the individual pieces of data that were collected.
Those instructional coaches are key to help facilitate those conversations. One little caveat, I've been trying to get into classrooms and teach some lessons. I was in a first grade classroom this morning teaching a writing lesson, and I was thinking about these myself before I walked out of my office to go do that, because I thought, hey, if they're implementing that stuff, I better be doing it as well.
And that's, Crystal's point is where my question rests, and that is, how do you share out those strategies across the building? Now, are all those strategies ones that all the teachers have had input into, or is this these are a list of strategies that one teacher wants to implement?
Groups.
They are in groups.
Presented. Anybody from the staff that wanted to input more strategies during that time could.
Okay.
And what I did is I took it and I put it in my staff memo, sent it out to everybody.
Fantastic.
Everyone has access to it.
Thank you.
The question I have is, obviously, we're focusing on improvement and where things are really, these are the things we need to work on. But I'm looking at a whole district. Okay, well, maybe GLW is really nailing it in a certain area really well. And another building might have their bars in a different place.
Yep.
And are we having a way to communicate that to other buildings, that this is what we're doing here?
Well, I think for me, the important part is, and if you remember when Al Bierman was here, they were presenting on instructional rounds,
Yeah.
teachers getting into other teachers' classrooms.
Yeah.
If we're highlighting those and we're saying, hey, this building has strategies they're utilizing, I think that's why it's important that we learn from each other. We get in each other's classrooms and we do that.
Not only within the building, but within other buildings.
It helps inform professional development across the district too, and I happened to sit in on a couple other elementary school staff meetings where they were looking at their data, and there were a lot of similarities in those areas, which I think made them feel good too, because they weren't isolated as a building. This is
No.
something we're not only working on as a building, but as a district as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I would echo that. We're seeing the common theme or trend across the buildings where we need to focus our efforts.
Good.
Two questions, Nick. Number one, and if you said it, I missed it, but this time when the teachers were in these groups, what time of day was this, and what day?
Staff, this is the staff meeting.
Which you have weekly, monthly, and
Yep, typically around 2 a month.
Okay.
After
school.
This is after school, not part of the Wednesday early release.
It's after school.
Okay, I just want to
Yeah.
make sure that everybody understood that. Secondly, explain to me just a quick review of the process that you and your team ended up being asked to present in Green Bay. I mean, how did that all come about? What was the communication? How did you develop the team? I mean, just give me a little background.
Absolutely. So for me, when I looked at presenting in Green Bay, it was actually something that I had done last year, and I was quite passionate about, sharing the Baraboo story. So to be able to present in Green Bay at this prestigious RTI Summit, you actually have to submit a proposal. So our team, myself, I came together with the reading specialist, Erin Verhagen, who expressed a little bit of interest in it, and then also Janae Shell from my building, and our GT coach from my building, Brian Ashbeck, who expressed some interest in it as well. We put together our proposal and submitted it, and it was accepted, and then we went from there. The thing I'll tell you is that we put in a lot of hours, an incredible amount of hours after school, before school, working from home through Google Docs, to put together a presentation and something that we thought we would do Baraboo justice. Even when we were down there, we spent, even though we were going to other sessions to take things away to bring back to our own building, at night we were preparing for our presentation, and and that's a little bit of the process.
There's a little bit more detail to that
Yeah.
actually, because initially we did not submit proposals. We had 3 teams present from our district at the same summit. John Bills, who's the director of WASDA, contacted Crystal and asked us to submit proposals from this district.
We put it together.
And it was pretty impressive to have 3 separate groups from our district presenting it.
John's group presented twice in one day too.
Well done.
Okay, thank you.
Did
Any
you
other
use the
questions?
word Baraboo proud?
I don't think we do. Gotta brand it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nick.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nick.
Nice job.
Great.
Up next on the agenda, we have discussion in regards to the impact on student achievement and social workers. I will turn it over to Ms. Scott for a very brief blue and gold.
Kind of beige,
Right.
like tan.
Not green gold.
I will keep this brief, I promise. All right, well, I just want to acknowledge I have several members of our student services team in the audience as well, and I've asked them to chime in as well, as long as our building, in addition to our building level principals as well. All right. So this is just a graphic that shows you really, there's 4 components to a comprehensive student services program within the school district. Our professional school counselors, school psychologists, our school nurses, and the piece right now that is missing for us is our school social workers. And all of them work collaboratively to support our students and our families. So really what their purpose is they systematically combat barriers to learning. So they address the academic, career, personal, social, mental, and physical health. And they really work together to create a supportive and caring school environment that not only promotes student success, but also staff success as well. You can read what the bullet points I have there on the slide, but really the goal of a comprehensive and collaborative student services team is really to help our students reach their maximum potential. And I have had the pleasure of working with this dedicated team for the last 4 years, and I can honestly say that I've never worked with a more dedicated or resourceful group of individuals. They really will stop at nothing to support our students and our families. So they are a real asset to the district. Probably the piece, though, that is the most difficult for us is navigating and hooking our students and our families up with those outside services. As I'm sure most of you are aware, there's an incredible shortage of mental health providers across the state, not just in our community. I know Sauk County Department of Human Services has had a child psychologist or psychiatrist position posted for over 2 years, and they've had 0 applicants. Our students that need to see a psychiatrist and access that service through the county because of lack of private insurance, have to wait 6 months to even get an appointment. So really, I would say that is the piece that we are struggling with, as I think any school district is as well. I know in your board packet, I provided some information, but really I just wanted to highlight the mental health needs across the country, and so I think our statistics certainly are representative of this. I really would like to point out the third bullet point there that you see. So for nearly half of the children with serious mental illness, school district personnel are the only provider of those services. And somebody coming from a school counselor and a school psych background, what I can tell you is, while we're certainly trained in many of those key skills, we are not mental health providers. And I think there's often that misperception out there. We can oftentimes put as Lori eloquently pointed out this week, we can put a Band-Aid on something that needs a tourniquet, and we can get the child through that day, but ultimately we are not, we don't have the resources to be able to adequately address some of the mental health needs that our students are walking into our building with.
Did we determine those numbers, or are those just statistics?
So what I did is I asked our school counselors and our school psychologists to put their heads together and just look through their student body list and come up with, again, it's an estimated percentage. So it's either students that have a diagnosed mental health condition, or because they haven't been able to get to a mental health provider, but certainly if they could, they would most likely be diagnosed with a mental health. So you can see this is our estimated percentages of students with significant mental health needs.
Or in some cases, it may not be the student themselves, but we're aware that the family has mental health issues because of information they've disclosed with us. So sometimes it's not the students, but there's something operating.
So these are both defined student issues as well as at risk.
Correct.
Yeah. So really, some of the mental health needs that our students are walking into our buildings with would include significant depression, anxiety disorders, diagnosed bipolar, students that are really experiencing psychotic episodes where they literally lose contact with reality. We have students that have auditory hallucinations. We have students that either do harm to themselves, either through cutting, or I know this year, earlier, one of our school counselors, I think, honestly prevented. We had a student who was having significant thoughts about doing harm to others, and because of the work of this school counselor, we were able to prevent something tragic from happening. So some pretty significant needs that are coming into our buildings. And of course, as Steve said, our families are under more and more stress these days as well, because of economic conditions, their own mental health needs, and so that certainly kind of creates a perfect storm for many of our students.
Danny, how does a school social worker work in conjunction with Sauk County Social Services?
So really what a school social worker would be able to do is to really navigate that county system for our students, to be an advocate, to get them hooked up either with county level services or private insurance, helping families get access to health insurance, either Badger Care. So it's really kind of navigating those outside services on behalf of that family and that children to be able to access those services that we're not able to provide within a school district.
Danny, thank you. I just want to pick up on that because one of the things that we all have to understand is that the school, as you've said, for many students becomes the last resource. And we know that in loco parentis means more now than it ever did before. We have to feed our children who come to school hungry. We have to have clothed clothes drives to clothe those children who don't have appropriate clothing. We have to provide all kinds of social service. One of the reasons that I have a concern of why we need such support for our students is that our county's services that are supposed to be able to support us have been cut. Our state services that are supposed to be supporting our counties so that they can support our schools have been cut. And if you want to do something about that, you can't do it at the level of the school. You have to take the issues to the legislature, because that's where the money gets allocated down to the counties and down to the local communities. We need those, and this district, I feel, and this board will approve the support that we need for our children. We've done that 1,000 times and we'll do it again. But we have to take a stand to say that the monies that need to be allocated to support those have to be brought from above.
You know, I think the county too, you know, those, you know, some people could say if we're sitting in the county seat, we have access to social workers all we want. Well, we don't, they don't work for us. And their caseloads are crazy. They're just crazy high. And for us to even get contact in a timely manner to help a family is very difficult. So I think that's another thing to consider, that I know at the surface it appears, well, man, we're sitting right here in the county seat, we have all the social workers we need, but you know, we don't have access to them when we need them. And it's difficult. And I know our staff gets frustrated with, you know, Department of Human Services, but you know, I kind of feel sorry for them because I know they have caseloads that are, you know, to the size of ours. So it's not, it's easy to point the finger, but it's not just that. They need support, like Mr. Vago said. They need more money and more allocation of services.
I did a little research and pulled together districts in the Badger Conference in terms of which districts support a social worker position and which do not. I also felt it was important to include the percentage of students identified as economically disadvantaged, because what the research shows is there is a direct link between poverty rates and mental health rates, both the type of mental illness as well as the severity. It's kind of a question of which came first, the poverty or the mental health, and I don't think we can, that's a discussion for another time. But as you can see, we are, in terms of the Badger Conference, we're the school district with the sixth, and from the 12-13 school year, we were the district with the sixth highest percentage of students that were identified as economically disadvantaged. And this rate has certainly increased even more this year as well. So Sean, kind of to get more to your question of what exactly would a school social worker do that our wonderful student services personnel doesn't already do. So really, again, somebody with a school social worker background really can be able to provide that psychotherapy and work with that family as well, more so than what we're able to do now. Really providing that wraparound services, which also ties in very well with our PBIS, and that's actually the third tier of providing PBIS services is providing a wraparound support for that, not only that child, but for that entire family as well. So it's really being able to work all aspects of the system to provide a continuum of service and really be able to mobilize that family and that student to get them through that crisis that they're dealing with at that time.
Do we have a lot of students that are identified for Tier 3 at this point?
For PBIS,
Yeah.
we certainly could have students. We just, to be honest, Doug, we don't have the manpower to be able to provide that level of support for our students.
So, I mean, I know we're not doing Tier 3, but there are students that could easily be in that area.
Absolutely.
I think the thing that's hard to understand as well, unless you're in the building, is how one or two students with significant mental health needs can impact the entire school in terms of student learning, in terms of administrative time, and all of those. And I know there's individuals at the table that could share stories about that this year. And we are seeing an increase at the elementary level with that population, and it is impacting the school climate on a daily basis.
Well, funny you should ask. No, I just happen to have a very timely work day today. I came to school and very little of this was on my agenda, but I just want to go through it quickly to let you know what, and I know every administrator and every service provider in here has had similar days this year.
And who are you again?
You had a bad day?
No, not really, but it was interesting for the discussion we're having here. I had a Families Comes First meeting, which is a wraparound program through the county. Family with mental health issues, counseling needs, medical needs. Then I went to an IEP here at the high school, dealing with a student that was in foster care, out of foster care, living with grandpa, behavior issues. Mom's been in and out of jail, has a criminal background. He's belligerent here at school. We don't know what to do with him. Met with a BHS student right after that, who Ms. Thornburg referred to me. He had already talked to her for an hour and a half. I talked to him for an hour. Over the weekend, got in an altercation with his dad. Dad threatened him. He's a very, very anxious kid. Non-stop talking with me, cycling through thoughts. Couldn't, I'd have to tell him to stop, take a breath, listen to what I say. And I'd say a few words, he'd interrupt me, just nervous about going home tonight, not knowing how Dad was going to react. And this was also a chronic truancy issue. This is an adult student, he just turned 18, but he's not coming to school. And that caused the friction between dads. So it's truancy, it's mental health, both within the family and with the student. Collectively, between Ms. Thornburg and I that was, easily 3 hours of our time today that we spent with one another.
Well, with that scenario, what's the social worker gonna do?
Well, the social worker would take some of that time away that we would spend on these, and also, this is someone that's been on a radar for a while. This wasn't just something that popped up. So hopefully they could help them work with the family and access those services. So he could be in more of a wraparound type program and be getting support not only at home but at school as well. I met with Danny then down at the ad building to discuss another family we have that's, we just had a Families Comes First meeting on, another meeting through the county with county workers. They have a waiting list for this family, high needs based on transportation, very high number of people in the family, and they're living in a 2-bedroom apartment. Kids aren't sleeping, all kinds of issues, and of course that all gets dragged into the school setting. Returned to Gordon Wilson, met with a student who wanted to talk with me, and he came and talked to me about a situation, again, very at-risk family, I would call them, and shared a story with me that I had to do a mandatory reporting call to Human Services on. And then I followed up on an adult student that was living here who moved in with his mother. Things weren't working out. Mom has mental health issues. She couldn't take him in. He ended up living with another family in town, and we needed to get a tuition waiver for him to stay in school for the rest of the year. And Ed, you bring up a great point. One person isn't going to address all these issues. Like I said, every person in here has dealt with these kinds of days. But it would be a start, it would be a help, it would be someone that could really, especially kind of organize and facilitate our connection with these families outside the building, so that a lot of these problems aren't coming into the building. But I just thought, honest to God, I did not make this up. It just happened, it happened today. We have these days sometimes, and you know, one school social worker isn't gonna address all these things. But, I think there's a place for it in our district that would be very helpful.
Yep, and Steve makes a great point, and really, the sooner we can intervene for these families, the better outcomes for these students. And so really, I think a social worker would, you know, obviously work collaboratively with our other student services personnel, building level administrators, teachers, to be able to really provide those early intervening services so we can change the course for some of these students. Because I guarantee you, our students that are dealing with these issues, no matter what kind of teacher we put in front of them, they are not learning. Just some financial information I wanted to provide to you. We do have the opportunity to claim a portion of a school social worker's salary and fringe under special education categorical aid reimbursement. Obviously, the example Steve talked about today where we have an 18-year-old student who's not attending school. Certainly, a social worker can work with those students to make sure that they are at school, particularly when we do our 2 count dates in the fall and the winter. You know, obviously when we have students in our seats, that means we have state aid coming in for those students. We can bill Medicaid for services for students who have IEPs or individual education plans. We're able to bill for some of those costs. And certainly if we have families that perhaps have not filled out a free or reduced school meal application, social worker can work with the family. Oftentimes there's a stigmatism associated with that, so families are reluctant to fill out applications. So social worker would work with families, and that would mean additional revenues coming in for the district. And also grant writing opportunities. I worked with the school counselors at the high school this year to write a teen parent grant. Unfortunately, we were not awarded one of those grants. There's a homeless grant coming up that's due at the end of the month. And so certainly just having additional resources to be able to assist in those efforts as well.
How difficult of a position is it to fill?
Be honest, Sean, I don't know.
It could be difficult.
I mean, are there social workers that are specifically trained for schools?
Yeah.
So what do you need from us tonight?
Nothing tonight.
Nothing
This is
tonight.
background information. We wanted to make sure that you had time to think about this and to ask questions. Certainly contact Danny if you have any follow-up, or any of the administrators. But we'll be providing some budget recommendations next week at the board meeting. And we want to present that in a more full picture for you rather than coming with individual requests.
Okay.
Right.
Thank
But
you, Danny.
just to reiterate, what I'm hearing from this last slide is that there is funding available on the federal level
Would help offset
to
some
help
costs.
offset by 59%, plus other areas, should we go ahead and create and fund that position. Okay, thank you.
And I think, and maybe I'm gonna talk to you, but just, obviously, these issues have impacts all the way across the board here. And so sometimes when we say, oh, we're adding a position, how is this freeing up other people in other situations is what we have to look and understand too.
Right, yeah,
So.
absolutely. Thank you.
Moving right along. Thank you, Danny, for that, and also additional conversation. Up next, we have Ms. Mueller to talk with us about the 2014-2015 Professional Development Plan, and also a little additional discussion as to how it's going to work moving forward as far as changes.
Yep, and again, this is more background information that will play into our budget discussions moving forward as well. In your board packet, you did have a copy too provided for you of our PLC map for next school year, so if you want to reference that, I will come to that later this evening. But first of all, I want to start and talk about why the investment in professional development. In any profession, there's something known out there in research as the 10-year rule. And the premise behind the 10-year rule is that it takes about 10 years of deliberate practice to reach an expert status. And I'll share with you why that's important in teaching soon. So in our context, 32%, or approximately 1/3 of our staff, is in their first 3 years of teaching. That's 1/3. So how does a district encourage teachers to continue developing their expertise? And there's just a couple of examples here, but I believe it's an ongoing professional development to develop that expertise, and also collaboration time with their peers, particularly peers who've built capacity or teacher leadership skills to help those new teachers along the way. So I wanted to share with you this table that is really meaningful to me when I think about professional development and why we offer professional development to our staff. This is based on work that's been done by McCrell, which is a Midwest educational lab. And they have looked at research over, again, 3 years or 3 decades worth of research. And what this table shows is the relationship between teacher competence and student achievement. And I think that's what we're all about here, is we want to support our students not only socially, emotionally, mentally, but we also want to grow them and give them the best pathways out in after the 4 years of or high school here. So when we look at this, what this shows is that a teacher who's deemed at the 50th percentile with their skills, if they get a student at the beginning of the school year who's also at the 50th percentile with their skills, will make 0 gains at the end of by the end of the school year. It's pretty significant. And as we build the skill set of our teachers, you can see that, if we get a teacher's at the 90th percentile, we can move that same student to the 68th percentile with their skill set. And if we have a teacher at the 98th percentile, which we have a lot of them out there in the district, we can gain that student up to the 77th percentile. So I think this is really important. So the message with this is student achievement in classes with highly skilled teachers is better than student achievement in classes with less skilled teachers. So some of the ways we provide professional development in the district, there's many different ways. So sometimes I think we just focus on the early releases, but that's just one tiny piece of what we do. We do staff development or professional development during faculty meetings, like you heard Nick share. We do book studies, and what's really interesting about our book studies is every single book study in the district is started or initiated by one of our teacher leaders. Conferences and workshops, instructional coaching, which we've made a heavy investment in the district, collaboration and release time, and sometimes we do release time during the school day and pull teachers out of classrooms to do some of the work that needs to be done. Sometimes we bring in consultants, although we've been really reducing our costs in consultants over the past few years because, again, we built some teacher capacity. And instructional rounds, which you heard Abe talk about, and walk-through feedback, that you heard Nick again share about today. So there's a number of different ways that we work to improve the skill set of our teachers. So let's just talk about the PLC plan in your packet. Some of the things that we've done as a district curriculum council, which just as a reminder is made up of our K-12 curriculum leaders, and which represents teachers from all across the district, every building and different grade levels. They've worked to map out those early release Wednesdays next year, focused on the 7 initiatives that we think are the most important. The same 7 initiatives that's come from our district strategic plan that we've been focusing on for the past couple of years. Along with that, during our pre-session, we're going to bring in Anthony Muhammad, who's a speaker about school culture. And we feel that culture needs to be a conversation in our district, and so we think he's a really powerful consultant to bring in and work with our staff for a day. And then on our first and third Wednesdays, we're going to continue to guarantee collaboration time for our staff to use data to drive their instruction in the classrooms, and also develop common assessments to support the alignment of our curriculum. Historically, these past couple years, we've done buffets, and the teachers seem to really like those because it gives them choice. It allows us to differentiate offerings for teachers. It's a way for us to share when teachers do go to conferences or workshops, they can present what they've learned to the rest of their peers. It's a way for Matt and some of his Google certified trainers to present training on the use of instructional technology in the classroom. We use it for a number of different strategies, so we're going to continue to do that on the second and fourth Wednesdays moving forward. We also have time built in for K-12 content area meetings, and those meetings are important because we've aligned the staff to represent themselves on one content area across the district. So there's a team for math, there's a team for language arts, there's a team for social studies, and on and on. And they like that time, and it's critical time, to collaborate on what is taught kindergarten to first to second. It's a vertical discussion so that we can make sure we're scaffolding instruction for students all the way. and sharing good instructional strategies too.
And Lori, when we get a little bit closer to fall, I'd like for Lori to share that information about Anthony Muhammad with the board. Any of you and all of you are encouraged to attend that. He is a fantastic speaker. I think any of the teachers or administrators who have heard him speak about school culture have come away with a changed mindset. And certainly you are more than welcome to attend that session.
Absolutely. And lastly, we have built-in time for coaching and support for the implementation of educator effectiveness. And that's probably one of the most significant changes to our early release structure for next year, is with that implementation across the state, we know we need to support our teachers through that process, and it's going to take time. So we've overlaid the system of educator effectiveness over our Wednesdays, and so we have time at the beginning of the school year, in the middle, and at the end of the school year to support them with that process. And again, educator effectiveness, the whole goal of educator effectiveness is to grow our professional practice, which therefore will grow our student outcomes. So with the investment that we've made in our teachers over time, we have seen increased teacher capacity. And the more we can keep our staff with us in the district long term, the more that capacity is going to grow. So what we'd like to do moving forward is keeping that attention to increasing the time that our teachers spend in their classrooms with students and reducing costs. And I think we're at a place where we're doing that. I just wanted to show a recent trend that we've been tracking of the amount of hours that teachers have been pulled from classrooms for professional development or collaboration. And you can see for the past 4 years, we have seen 2011 and 12, I'm ashamed to say that was my first year here, but that was the year that we were working on developing essential learning targets, if you recall. That took a huge army of staff to get that work done. So, you know, when I think about the goals of our district strategic plan, we've been on a very ambitious path. And we're seeing the results of that in our student gains. We're seeing the results of that of respect and admiration from our peers. And I think that what we're seeing now, with last school year we had a significant decrease, and we have projected, again, decrease for this year for that amount of time. And in looking at our budget moving forward for next year, I still think we can reduce that more. Some of the ways we'd like to do that is reduce the frequency of our internal meetings. And I just put up some of the areas where we can do that and we feel pretty comfortable, again, because of the growth we've already made as a district in these areas. Another place where we're going to save dollars next year is hosting our mentoring seminars. Those are seminars for our new teachers after school. We've been in the practice of doing half-day releases with our new teachers, with our district instructional facilitators, and we feel that particularly for our new teachers, that's not probably the best approach because they really do need to be in the classroom gaining their skills. So we're going to plan that for after school. Jim has come forward and said that he would like to support athletic coaches' attendance at clinics only. So, you know, this could be potentially contentious, but we have a number of coaches who are teachers who go to state tournaments, and they're out of the classrooms for that. And we feel that if it's professional development dollars, it should be sending coaches where they're gaining some new skills as well. We're going to limit the number of attendees at conferences and workshops. And this is tough for our staff because they all want to get out and they all want to see the best of the best, share strategies, just like some people came to hear the best of the best talk at the Green Bay Summit. But I do think that, again, we've built capacity over the past few years. We've had a number of teacher leaders who've been out of their classrooms quite a bit. And there's some value in getting them out there and getting new strategies so they can come back and share it with the rest. But at the same time, they're our best teachers. And we got to make sure that they're in the classroom with our kids too. So we're going to work on that. And we really have less need to contract with consultants outside the district to bring them in because of the level of expertise that we've built in the district. So with that, I just want to say next week when we come, we'll come with a figure of how much we can reduce our professional development costs.
One of the strategies that Glenn has used at the high school recently is to develop action teams within the building based on their area of interest and expertise. And I think that's another example of how we're building capacity. Instead of having the same 20% do all the heavy lifting,
Right.
and it's the same people that want to volunteer and be a part of this committee and that committee, and it can become overwhelming unintentionally for those
Sure.
individuals, that leadership is distributed out across the entire building. There's still choice for teachers, there's still that collaboration and group work, but it allows then those groups to come back, much the way that Nick's teams did when they were looking at those, developing those instructional strategies, and then they share out with the entire team. And so, again, that's another way that we're using to minimize the time out of the classroom and, you know, to keep working in that direction.
Just a caution. All of the research and everything that you've laid out before us and all of what we have supported and underwritten is moving in the right trend. Baraboo School District is being recognized statewide. Our student achievements, according to the data that I looked at that you sent out, in terms of achievement, growth, is moving exactly the way we want. We're doing so many good things. I am not ready to see the support for professional development reduced.
Well,
Okay?
yeah.
I, as a board member, as an educator, I understand that there are certain areas that we can,
The main reduction in the budget will be with substitute teachers and with registration fees outside the district. And part of that is because we are at a point now, our staff has worked so hard in this district, they're at a point where they can do a lot of that support for one another, and the training and the sharing and learning for each other. So the fee, you know, it'll be about 20,000, I think, is
Right,
what we
correct.
estimate.
And I feel like that's a step in the right direction. I still feel, I mean, I wouldn't make that recommendation if I didn't feel like our teachers were getting their needs, because like I shared with the data or the research, it is really critical, particularly with such a young staff. And if we continue to see a trend where we have that many new teachers,
and we know we are.
need to make sure that we take care of them so
We-
that they're taking care of our students.
Correct. We know that we are going to see more and more younger teachers. We know that we have to transform teacher education at the collegiate level, which is also on the table, right? Teresa, there are many things that need to be done. That this is about a whole living system, right? Or how all the pieces fit together and work together. I hear you, and I do think that we can become self-sufficient with all of the accomplishments that we've made, and our teacher leaders, our administrators, we are all part of this living system. Our to-be social worker to join our student services needs, all of that, okay? We have to do all of that. Once again, I'm simply going to say we have to be very surgical about the cuts that we make, and I know you are. At the same time, we cannot remain silent about demanding the funding that we need.
Well, I think one
to
of the
support
unseen
us.
benefits too as well is, you know, one of my highlights in Green Bay was not only bumping into Jordy Nelson, but also, you know, just sitting down at a table and someone next to me would say, "What district are you from?" And would say Baraboo, and they go, "Oh, you got a lot of great things going on there." And what you don't see is then when we go to recruit new teachers to this district, how that attracts the best and the brightest, and that's where the rubber hits the road. What happens in that classroom, and we want to put great people in our classrooms, and one of the ways to do that is to attract the attention of great teachers.
I can vouch for that today.
Yep.
Couple questions. A lot of discussion lately in the community, at least in my directed towards me in regards to early release Wednesdays. I would like to see a way that, you know, and I don't, we can stay here till midnight, and there's a lot of family members in the community that I'm not going to be able to convince that early releases are a fantastic idea. But I think it is important for us, having invested time, money, and personnel into professional development, in particular over the last 3 or 4 years, to find a way to allow for staff, and by staff I mean entire staff that are affected by professional development, and that involves early releases, to survey them to find out how they feel about it. Because I know different board members get different feedback from different teachers as to how they value. And I, as a board member, I don't need to be convinced of that, but I think it is important for us to find a way, and I certainly am not one to sit down and develop the questions, but I think we need to find a way to do that, and we need to find a way to do that relatively soon so that we're not surveying people in May about professional development. I think it's important to do it relatively soon because the responses and the input are going to be much more valuable. So that we have, number one, a way to validate everything we've been saying. And if there are things we can be doing differently that I don't know about, that you don't see, that Crystal doesn't hear about, that we can find a way to incorporate that into what we're doing moving forward. Secondly, I understand Peter's point about we can't throttle down on what it is that we're doing. But the reality of it is that this is an area of our budget that we do have some control over. There are other areas of our budget we do not. I don't want to suggest that the Baraboo School District gut our professional development program. I totally get what Mr. Gannell says in that this does allow us to attract things like this, discussions like you had in Green Bay allow us to attract the best and the brightest and hopefully tenured teachers in our district. But I think we need to find a way to, either through policy or a flow chart, find a way to prioritize how we spend those monies. And it may be as simple as the conferences that are closest to our district, that are going to cost the least to go to, are prioritized over those that are the furthest away and are going to cost the most. And that may be part of a number of steps in a process to help do that. And I'm not pretending you don't do most of that right now, but I think that the board needs to have a handle, and by a handle I mean an understanding of how we get to those conferences, what the process is, how it's validated through that process. We get a lot of feedback from those that attend the conferences, and that's fantastic. I mean, I appreciate that. I have found, on a personal note, the conversations we've had tonight, not that other meetings aren't important, I have found them very entertaining from a standpoint of educational entertainment, learning something from what it is that we're talking about. And this, I think, is very important for us as a board to get behind, but I think it's not important enough for just us to be behind it. I think we need to make sure that the staff is behind it.
We did a survey I think it was a couple of years ago.
It was
and
my
we put
first
out
year here, yeah.
different times where staff might want to meet after school, extending the day. We did have some questions. I'd have to go back and look at that again, but I think it's time to probably do that. And I think it's probably time to send something out to parents asking, if they have concerns about that time, what can we do as a school district to address that? When we've expanded our wraparound care for kids, we've tried to provide more opportunities for high school students with our UW partnership. We're providing transportation to Boys and Girls Club. So I'm not saying that meets all the needs, but I think it's time to reach out again to parents and ask, are we meeting your needs? If not, what do we need to do?
Well, I think in the past, when a district or any organization would do a survey, there was an apprehension on some people's behalf to participate because they truly didn't believe that their responses were anonymous. And I think with SurveyMonkey that the board has done surveys on, I think, not speaking for all the staff, but I think the vast majority of the staff believe that SurveyMonkey is an anonymous way to provide feedback. I don't know that belief was there 3 or 4 years ago. I think that's fairly new, but again, that's just my opinion. I just think that we need to do what you're talking about to maybe it's to do things a little differently, tweak things.
And Lori and I have talked about changing the approval process for conferences. In fact, we haven't even had a discussion with the admin team about those potential changes yet. And I do think we can tighten it up a bit and do it in a way that doesn't have a negative impact on our district and allow people that want to be engaged in that professional development to still access those resources.
Well, and I hope that nothing, I'm not trying to criticize anything that you're doing. I applaud everything that you're doing. I just think that, we're in a referendum situation. We've got a vote 3 weeks from now. The conversation in the community turns to things sometimes that you wouldn't expect to be part of a referendum discussion. But I just think that it would be beneficial to us as a board and a district trying to respond to the community's questions. And I think it would help in the process of professional development if you heard some things that people might want to see different. And we have the ability to do that now, to get that information. And I would, we've got another meeting in a week, and between now and then, and I don't know what part the board would want to be part of the formulation of questions. Maybe you guys can come up with some questions and the board can review them, or policy committee can look them over and say, yeah, it looks good, and the full board can approve them.
Anybody but finance committee.
Right?
We'll work on that. I think we have
Give
more
it the
direction.
policy.
Yes.
But thank you for the presentation.
But I'm sorry, I would also say that asking questions, asking for feedback without having a proper frame around what you're looking for is totally meaningless. So we have to provide a certain frame, and that is the data of what these investments that we have put in have produced, just like you laid out for us. And then a question, is this the direction you want us to continue in? Makes a lot more sense than saying, should we continue Wednesday early release?
Right.
There has to be a frame
Right.
for people to have some understanding of what that has done for academic achievement, what that has done for school culture, and what we have done to wrap around to ensure the fact that the students who are released are cared for. They're not thrown out into the middle of the street. Anyway, I'm just saying there needs to be some of this data that we've collected available before you ask people to make decisions.
Well, I have the utmost confidence that our administrative team, with the limited amount of guidance and input from this board, will do just that.
Well, I would like to hope that we can give them more guidance. One of the things that we are obviously going to probably be doing in the next year is the strategic plan.
Right.
This is obviously near, if not at the top of that strategic plan, but we need to have that conversation. And part of that conversation, we'll be talking about the early release, not only in here, but even external. And so we need to bring community people into that conversation. So that's my input into this whole process, is that it's a great process. We need to continue to support it, but it needs to be supported through what is our critical priorities, and that's what we need to do as not only this table, but as the whole community involved with it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Brings us to the portion of the agenda entitled Request for Approval of Retirement Agreement for Mr. Considine. I will entertain a motion for the approval of that request.
So moved?
Second.
Motion by Vedro, seconded by Riley. Any discussion?
28 years? Feels like 29 after tonight, right? Well, it does for me. Congratulations.
If I get what I want, I'm gonna get used to long meetings.
Yeah.
This is going to be nothing. This will be nothing.
You'll be sitting in these kind of chairs, not those kind of.
Having a motion and a second, any further discussion? In order not to prolong Mr. Considine's visit with us tonight, those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion
Thank you.
carried. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. On a personal note, thank you.
For all the leadership over the years that you've provided to the district.
One question has nothing to do with that. I assume that your homestead is still available for gatherings for,
I'll plan another one before I'm done this
yeah,
spring.
okay.
We will.
Good. Sounds good to me. Approval of resignations. We have a resignation addressed to the board from our finance director, Ms. Baldwin. I would entertain a motion for the acceptance of that resignation, which is effective the 30th of June.
I move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Meering, seconded by Vedro. Any discussion?
Thank you for being with us and providing that leadership and enjoy.
It's been a pleasure. It really has.
Yes, good luck. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
With reluctance.
Motion carried. Thank you. All right, well, I don't have any requests for approval of new hires or postings
Well,
at this time.
I'd like to visit that approval of postings. I assume that moving forward with vacant positions, the district can act in a timely manner and post for those positions. Obviously, the board would be approving any new hires for those positions or any new positions that we would seek.
That's always the modus
Yeah, that's always
Is that
the
all
way
right?
we've operated.
Okay,
How do you-
great. Thank you.
Yeah, well,
That having been said, there are no immediate postings, correct? Or there are?
Well, there will be after
There will be.
tonight.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thought we- yes, understood. I'm not aware of any approval of long-term substitute positions, so that brings us to F, which is the preliminary notice of refusal to renew the individual contract of special education program support teacher Donna Baker pursuant to the applicable statutes. And that really doesn't sound very nice, but.
I know it doesn't sound very nice, and it's not based on performance. It was a one-year position, a temporary one, because we could not fill the school psychologist position. Donna's, I think, Danny would say, has done a great job and would be considered for positions for which we have openings and which she is licensed for.
I just wanted to afford an opportunity for description, correction, clarification as to how it's posted, how it is, and I understand why it's posted how it is. Entertain a motion to that effect.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Motion by McNevin, seconded by Meering. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Brings us to the portion of the agenda entitled New Business, and for that I will turn to our district penningmeister, Mr. McNevin.
Yeah, thanks for
Mr.
the,
Disbursements
thanks
and
for the Dutch version of my title, which
Absolutely.
so kindly sent me off of my Google page. You got a copy of the bills I move to approve? Is that what we're talking about? Yes.
Waiting for a second.
I'll second it.
Otherwise, I just make a motion to adjourn, I don't care.
I'll second it.
Motion by Mr. McNevin for the approval of disbursements as presented, seconded by Mr. Meering. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Brings us to the portion of the agenda waiting for a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? We are adjourned.